This is Trifecta Sports Talk with Tanner Rebello, where we talk about the latest in Boston sports.
Welcome to Trifecta Sports Talk. I'm your host, Tanner Rebello. Today's show, a little bit different. I'm in the Wire studio, but I'm not actually on Wire right now. Figured it was best just to keep it to one thing and go through the topics that way and go through the show. Just finished the edition of the Red Sox show with Evan Cook. That'll be up later on YouTube and SoundCloud. It will not be on Facebook. This show will be on Facebook, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Kicking it off today, we're going to talk about the New England Patriots, have some updates from training camp. Training camp on Friday was a scrimmage between Team White and Team Blue, with Bill Belichick basically splitting the squad up. You have some notes from that. Nate Soldier, Matthew Slater, and Cody Hollister were absent today. They're the same as yesterday. Joe Tooney, the guard for the New England Patriots, left practice early, was looked at medical staff. No update on him yet. Didrik Weiss played with the first team again today. He's tripped Jacoby Brissett. He had good pressure throughout the entire practice, 2 sacks and at least 3 tackles from Didrik Weiss, and he was also working about an hour after practice, continuing to work out in the backfield. So you're seeing a lot of things from him, and he could be definitely a weapon for the Patriots to use in the pass rush and potentially the run stop as well. So it's good to see stuff like that out of him. Brandon Cooks made a circus catch over Stephon Gilmore. Atlanta Roberts made several great run-stopping plays as well, one on Deion Lewis. Tom Brady went 10 for 12 with 1 touchdown. One of that touchdown pass was to Devin Lucien. Lucien also had another touchdown. That was a 40-yard pass from Jacoby Brissett. Brady ended up running onto the field and celebrating with Jacoby about that. Jimmy Garoppolo went 14 of 36 without a touchdown. Jacoby Brissett went 3 of 7. He came in for Tom Brady. After Brady left, he went 3 for 7 with the touchdown. Julian Edelman, Chris Hogan, and Danny Amendola did not participate in the scrimmage. This caused DJ Foster, a running back on the New England Patriots roster, to line up as a wideout for Jimmy Garoppolo's team. Steven Gostkowski missed a 47-yard field goal as well, but he did make 3 short ones earlier in the practice. The secondary had an impressive showing against Garoppolo and Team White, not giving Jimmy G anything to work with. It was the number 1 offense going against the number 1 defense. Patriots training camp is back on Saturday, but they are off on Sunday. Every day leading up to Thursday this preseason, so Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, they will have joint practices with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Monday and Tuesday will be regular training camp practices with Jacksonville. And then on Wednesday, they will have a joint walkthrough ahead of Thursday's preseason opener at Gillette Stadium. A lot of things going on with the New England Patriots. Tom Brady turned 40 years old on Thursday. This has been widely blown out of proportion, in my opinion. You know, if you look at Tom and what he's been able to do in his career, it is something spectacular. Tom Brady has been a legendary quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback, the greatest of all time even. And I think a lot's been made of 40 years old for Tom. You know, I think last year you saw some signs of slowing down in his velocity. Some of his reactionary speed probably wasn't as good as it could have been. That throw to Julian Edelman in the Super Bowl was immensely underthrown there. So if you look at Tom and, you know, look what's going on with the team, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, you look at the situation, they hold down to Jimmy G, despite the fact that they potentially should have traded it. You know, it's interesting here when you talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo, you know, he's had an interesting camp. If we talk about the Scott Zolak report in 98.5, Zolak was at training camp watching after the practice had ended for the day a couple days ago. And you saw Tom Brady. Tom Brady was working to get better. Where Jimmy Garoppolo was, I think he was running fade routes or post routes or something like that, where he was having a receiver do that and he was throwing it to him. And of course, you can't get better from that. But Zolak noted that, you know, if you watch what Tom Brady was doing in the backfield, you know, Tom was working on his strength and conditioning. He was working on stuff like that. And that's what makes Tom Brady a legendary quarterback and greatest of all time, is because he puts the work in. That's why when he turns 40 years old, and when he turned 40 years old, I look at him and I say, this is the guy that could potentially break the mold. No, we're talking about the oldest non-kicker in the NFL right now. That's what Tom Brady is. Every other player above 40 years old is either a kicker or a punter. So what Brady's doing is different. Is it going to be different than what Brett Favre had? Is it going to be different than Warren Moon? I don't know. Ultimately, he has probably the greatest training regimen of all time. Apparently, greatest diet of all time. Doesn't really get injured outside of that one season where he went down and Matt Castle had to come in. But for Tom Brady, we continue to talk about him and talk about what he's capable of. A couple years ago, he was kind of written off. He had Trent Dilfer come out and said he was done. You have Skip Bayless now, who's saying that the Patriots are going to release Tom Brady at some point. He's predicting he's going to be released and Jimmy Garoppolo will be the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. This man has won 5 Super Bowls. And I don't see a cliff. I don't think Brady's going to drop off a cliff like Dilfer said in 2015. I look at this, and I look at Brady, and I think there will be a decline, a slow decline. But I look at the rest of the NFL, and this is what's important here. What is his competition? What other quarterbacks are great in the NFL right now? You look at Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's a good quarterback, but is he a great quarterback? You look at Dak Prescott. He's an exciting player to watch. Look at Derek Carr out in Oakland. Is Russell Wilson a great quarterback? Aaron Rodgers, I think, is a great quarterback. But if you look at Brady, you look at the AFC, even at a slow decline, you have to only wonder that he's still going to be a very good quarterback, better than the rest. And he's 40 years old. He's had rumored concussions, which he didn't want to talk about in practice. And I will have some quotes from that coming up. But with Tom, it is interesting. I'm not going to put a timeline on him because I think he could legitimately play until he's 45. I think he can play as long as he wants to because that's the kind of mindset he has. That's the kind of competitor that he is. Can they protect him? With Brett Favre. Brett Favre can still make the throws probably today. That's what he says. Brett Favre claims that he could make all the throws he could right now to this day. But can he be protected? Can he take the hits? Can he move around in the pocket? That's going to be Brady's issue. And the fact is he's putting in the work. He's putting in the time. Eventually, time will catch up with him, though. Eventually, he won't be able to move around in the pocket. Eventually, he's going to take a lot of hits. The Joe Thuney news, the fact that Joe Thuney left practice, doesn't bode well for Brady. That's something you have to be worried about because I think the number one threat to the New England Patriots right now, in terms of Tom Brady, is if that line can't protect him. I think if Brady did go down, in theory, and Jimmy Garoppolo is your starting quarterback, or even Jacoby Brissett, I think you'd be fine. I still think you're going to win the AFC East at that point. But with Brady, it's all going to be, can they protect him? Or how long will Bill want to wait? What's the point where Brady is declined to the point where Jimmy Garoppolo is meeting him? Or Jimmy Garoppolo has succeeded him at that point in terms of what he can do on the football field? That's going to be important. When is that time? When is Jimmy Garoppolo actually going to be better than Tom Brady? And I don't think he is right now. I don't think he's anywhere close to it. Obviously training camp numbers don't matter, but Jimmy G hasn't had a great camp. And if you watch, Brady's still putting in more work. He still knows what he's doing. So I think it's interesting. When will Bill Belichick decide, we're going to go with Jimmy Garoppolo? Will Tom Brady still be the best option for them at that point? Will he just have to make the conscious effort? Well, for the next 5 years, who's my quarterback? It's not going to be Tom Brady. It's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. There's a better chance of that happening. So Jimmy Garoppolo is telling Bill, hey, Coach Belichick, I'm leaving. I've had enough. I want to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Either you do it to me or I'm gone. Obviously, the Patriots hold all the power there. They can franchise tag him and say, hey, you're sitting on the bench, Jimmy. You're not going anywhere, buddy. You're right here in New England. They can do that, ultimately. But do they want to? Is that really a good working relationship to have? And I think they will franchise him next year. I think the franchise tag will be implied. But will Bill move on from Brady? Not for Brady's decline. Not for Brady's lack of play or anything like that. But will he move on from him just to keep Jimmy Garoppolo happy? When Garoppolo is ready to play. Because I think Jimmy Garoppolo is ready to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think you saw that last year. Are you the best team in the AFC with Jimmy Garoppolo? Probably, because you have a lot of talent on that Patriots roster. Would you win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo? Do you trust Jimmy Garoppolo down 28-3 to come back? I don't. But I also haven't seen it. You haven't seen that high leverage situation. We talk about it in baseball with relievers. Joe Kelly hasn't had a high leverage situation, so do you trust him in the 8th inning? Same thing in football. We haven't seen it with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's not his fault, obviously. But it is interesting to see what's going to happen. Are they going to wait out until Brady wants to retire? Are they going to let him go on his own terms? Are they going to trade him? Because I don't think they're going to release him, like Skip Bayless is saying they could. They certainly could do that. I think more likely happens is Brady sits down with the Kraft and sits down with Belichick, and they talk about what team you'd want to go to. And with that, if there was a Brady trade on the table, would it be to a team like the San Francisco 49ers? Obviously a team in turmoil. But would Brady want to return home? Would he want to turn around his home franchise? Potentially have a chance at the Super Bowl? Potentially have a chance to be a success? Because if you do look around the NFL, all the franchises that is worth playing for at this point pretty much have quarterbacks locked down for the future. The only exception potentially would be the Denver Broncos, who have Trevor Siemian as their quarterback. So, you talk about Brady, you talk about if there is a trade going on, would it be to a team like Denver? I don't know why he would. Ultimately for Tom, what's there left to achieve? If he doesn't win the 6th title this year with the Patriots, is that going to be his driving factor? Or does he want to be known, I won without Belichick, I was able to turn around a franchise? Because even at age 40, even at age 41 next year, when this could all potentially happen, I do believe Tom Brady could be a franchise-altering quarterback. Because he hasn't shown me anything that would prove otherwise. I think there's been less velocity there with his fastball. I think there's the movement in and out of the pocket. I think he's been fine. I think he's been great. I actually think his movement around the pocket, the way he works it, has been better than in his entire career. I think he's in the best shape he's ever been, and that's insane. The velocity thing, I think you can work around. I think if you're a smart enough quarterback, you can understand what kind of pockets you can hit. You can kind of work around that, have your receivers do different routes, so you don't have to really put it all on there. But I still think when he rears back and he goes and gets it, which you saw in a Danny Amendola play in the Super Bowl, he still has it. You can still throw the heat. So I think when you talk about Brady, you talk about this age 40 thing. I don't think it's that big of a deal as people think. I think from 39 to 40, I don't think there's going to be a decline with Brady. I think he's just a different kind of player. He's a different kind of monster. He's a different animal. He's not like Favre. He's not like Warren Moon. He's not like Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not like Peyton Manning. He's not like any other quarterback in the NFL because ultimately we haven't seen this before, especially in New England. I mean, if you're a 49ers fan, you probably say Joe Montana. And I think Brady would still say Joe Montana is the best quarterback of all time. He's before my time. But to me, I'm never going to see a quarterback better than Tom Brady. Because he's a winner. And ultimately, that's what matters in sports is winning. So moving on here. Continuing to talk Patriots. I have some quotes from Tom Brady's interview today. Or he met with the media for the first time on Friday. So I'm gonna go through this right now. I just got this email from the New England Patriots. So I have the transcript in front of me right now. So he was asked, how is 40 years old treating you so far? He said, I woke up today feeling like I did yesterday morning and the day before that, so it was good. Just like I said. Thank you for backing me up there, Tom. So going through this, he was asked about the concussion story. So this is really what the big news is from this Brady press conference. This was the first one of training camp, so there was a ton of questions here. A ton of questions where he was asked about different players, Brandon Cooks. But the focus of this and major headlines have been the concussion, where Gisele Bündchen, his wife, alleged or kind of let out that Tom Brady's dealt with concussions and had one last year. And this is what Tom said to the media. I don't want to get into these things that happened in my past, certain medical history and so forth. I really don't think that's anybody's business. What happened last year, and I'm focused on this year, improving and working on things I need to get better at. Can you, you're sitting there, you're 20 years into your NFL career. You have 5 Super Bowls, 7 Super Bowl appearances. You're considered the greatest of all time. And you're out there 40 years old. And you're saying, I need to improve and get better. I can't imagine. But, I mean, really, that's different. That's why Tom Brady's different than any other quarterback, because you're sitting there, and this guy's thinking, I got to get better. Oh, man. the drive that Tom Brady has. It is interesting. But, he doesn't want to talk about it. And it's not anybody's business. That's what he says. Ultimately, if you're the NFL, you're saying, well, Tom, it's our business. This has to be in the medical records. This is part of player safety. This is part of ensuring that players ultimately are healthy. CTE is a really big issue in the NFL. NFL is kind of brushed it under the rug, dismissing a lot of reports, a lot of credible reports at that. So when Tom says it's no one's business, I think, ultimately his medical issues and concussions or whatever, lingering effects he might have, I think it is his business and his family's business, and that's it. But during the football season, I don't think the Patriots want to put, concussion for Brady on their thing. Ultimately, I don't think he ever got registered for concussion, if that makes sense. I think it's probably like one of those wink, wink, nod, nod kind of deals with Brady. But it is interesting to really hear, this quarterback who hasn't really had these injury issues just not talk about it. I'm not shocked. He doesn't really want to take attention. He doesn't want to blow it out of proportion. But I think he had concussions. He didn't deny it. But I think that comes with the game. I think it comes with the sport. And I think, that's just football. That's a contact sport. And I think you do have to be open about it. But I don't think Brady needs to talk about it too much. I don't think it should be public in terms of, after it happens. But during the season, if he has a concussion, I think it should be treated properly. That's important. So he was actually followed up with that question. He said there was a CTE study issued last week. This is what he was asked. Did you pay any attention to that? And have you looked into that issue? So Tom Brady actually acknowledged. He said, well, I think you're not blind to it as a player. That's why I believe there's so much being proactive with your health. So that is something that Brady is very into. 24/7 health nut, only eats certain things. I don't think he eats tomatoes or something because it's like a dark fruit or something like that. So, it's an interesting player. I continue to say it, and you're going to say it forever. He's a different animal. You look at the photos of him coming into the league, look at him now, he looks better. In fact, I think he looks younger now than he did when he come in. I mean, this is a player that, as a Patriots fan, every other sport in this town I've kind of fallen off of in terms of being a really big fan of and being more of like a journalistic standpoint. Not really into the whole super fan thing. I'm not really that. I don't really think I'm a fan of the Red Sox. I like the team. I hope they win, right? But, I write about the team. So I try to be less biased. But with Tom Brady and the Patriots, especially Brady, I don't see it ever going down. I think it's foolish to go out and say that he's going to fall off a cliff or that he's going to be traded or whatever. I think eventually something's going to happen because it's inevitable. But I think he's the greatest of all time. So it is different. And he was asked earlier this year, Robert Kraft said he hopes he can play to your 50s. So Brady was asked, do you have a general idea how long you keep on playing? This is a direct quote from TB12 here. He said the 50s. I don't think I even said the 50s. Maybe once, I just love doing it. It is incredible. I don't put a timeline on Tom. I think eventually maybe Giselle. I think her leaking that information of the concussion on national TV, I think that was kind of a little look into what's going on there. I think potentially Giselle would be like, hey, can you stop playing? And maybe Tom is push it off for now. But there's going to be a point where I think he has to retire probably for the sake of his family or, spend more time with them, which is fine. That's great. That's something he should definitely be looking at. I think it's a very legitimate excuse to retire for him because he is 40. What else is there to do in this sport? Win 6 championships. I think that's it. I think you walk away then because I think it makes sense. And when you're 7, after that, once you won your 6th, are you going to want that 7th, that 8th? And I think that's the kind of guy he is, that competitive level. He always wants to be the winner, and that's great. And that's what makes him a really good quarterback. And that's what made him one of the last picks in the draft to being, the greatest of all time. And it is truly fascinating when you talk about Tom Brady and what's going on. So, Coldplay is at Gillette Stadium on Friday night. And Tom Brady said they're one of my favorite bands. So that's pretty interesting as well. Coldplay. Go figure. So moving on with more Patriots talk here. What could derail the New England Patriots? This is a discussion I think a lot of people have had. You heard me talk about how I think they're going to be fine. If Brady goes down, I think they could potentially work around it. I think there's other things that could potentially derail them. So I'm going to go through the list. Say Malcolm Butler goes down. I think you're fine. You could go injury. So I think I'm going to stay away from that. Outside of the quarterback position, because I think you can fine if you lose an injury here or there. Certain players, obviously, you can't. So if Julian Edelman goes down with an injury, I know I just contradicted myself, but if Edelman goes down, I think you have a really big issue with this team. I think you don't have a real slot option behind him as a Danny Amendola. He's not really that great in terms of the Edelman role. I think if Julian Edelman goes down, you're screwed. Rob Gronkowski goes down, you don't have Marty Betta anymore, but Dwayne Allen coming over from the Indianapolis Colts, I think is a really solid option for you. And Gronkowski is actually really high on him. He's a hard worker. So I think you can do without Rob Gronkowski. I think if he went down with an injury, you're fine. I think if Brady goes down, I do trust Jimmy Garoppolo or Jacoby Brissett or some form of that. I think you could deal with it. And the chances of Brady going down aren't that high. Because he doesn't go down. He's like Superman or something. You talk about the running back group. I don't think running backs really matter. I don't think running backs matter in football, really. I think you're going to move the ball either way. I think you could have anybody back there, and I think Bill Belichick thinks the same way. So I moved on from guys like Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, Stephen Ridley. Yeah, the list goes on and on. You didn't believe LeGarrette Blount should get paid, even though LeGarrette Blount led the league in touchdowns for rushing touchdowns last year. Had the Patriots season record for touchdowns. You moved on from LeGarrette Blount. You don't have Mike Gillisley, Rex Burkhead, Deion Lewis, James White, all these shifty little backs, and I think they'll be fine with them. I think you'll move the ball very well. So if one of them goes down, and even two of them go down, say they all go down, I think they'll be fine. Because I don't think running backs matter. Chris Hogan goes down, I think you're fine. I think if Brandon Cooks goes down, I think if Brandon Cooks doesn't, I think if he fails to integrate with the team, that kind of concerns me. I think you've seen it before, but ultimately I think you're fine. I think Malcolm Mitchell, if he's injured, I think that's not really going to factor in too much either. But if Mitchell's healthy and Cooks doesn't really integrate, you're fine. The list goes on and on with this team. I think the kicker situation kind of worries me. I think if Steven Gostowski's not on at 33 years old, if he's not kicking effectively, if he's missing shots, that worries me. I would have liked to see them maybe draft a kicker or bring in one and kind of create some kind of competition here, kind of a little fire underneath Gostowski's ass there, and hopefully something happens with it. But they didn't do that, so I ultimately think Gostowski will be fine. But that does concern me. I think he could derail your team. I think punting. I think Ryan Allen's fine. I'm not too worried about that. Punt return game. I think Cyrus Jones is your punt returner. Scares the living hell out of me, but ultimately he's a very good punt returner. That's why they drafted him out of Alabama. Nick Saban was high on him. Bill Belichick was high on him. Didn't have a good rookie year, but he's entering his second year, and I think he's learned from his mistakes. I don't want to see Danny Amendola really returning punts or anybody like that. So I really want to see Cyrus Jones be the guy who's returning punts consistently here. But I don't know if I trust him. I wouldn't say it would derail your team, but say he can't return punts. All right, you bring in a guy like Amendola. Amendola gets injured. Well, now you're down a receiver here. And you, as deep as you think you are at the receiving position for the New England Patriots, the issue is Tom Brady is the kind of quarterback that needs to have that connection. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. It needs to be an elite level connection with these receivers, or he doesn't trust you. You drop a pass, you're not going to get looked at for an entire season. So receivers going down is a big deal. So that is something that could derail your team. Talk about the defense. I think Stephon Gilmore, Malcolm Butler, that secondary is going to be legit. I think people were worried that Butler would be mad that they didn't want to pay him. But I don't think he will. I think he'll be a true professional. I think he'll play his heart out and go and be a free agent next year. Leave the New England Patriots because I think he will be gone. Because I think it would have made sense for him to stay. So for derailing the team, I really think, Julian Edelman, if that guy goes down, I think you have an issue. But I think you could work around it. I really do. I think you could work through a lot of issues with this team. But that's what makes them one of the better teams in football because they are built pretty well. There's a lot of rookies right now or guys in training camp that you don't even heard of. And I think they're going to have an impact on this team because that's just the way the New England Patriots work. It's the way Bill Belichick's system works. So moving on here, we're going to get in some Red Sox talk. Talk about Thursday's game. Talk about Devers' power, his opposite field ability. And talk about Rick Porcello. Talk about this weekend series. Talk about Dustin Pedroia. Bunch of stuff to talk about here as well. So, Thursday's game, they won 9-5 against the Chicago White Sox. You had Rick Porcello on the mound. Porcello won 5.1 innings, giving up 5 earned runs on 7 base hits. Gave 1 home run in that game. Porcello is an interesting pitcher here for the Boston Red Sox because he does, really signify a lot for this team going forward. He's a reigning Cy Young winner. Hasn't had a lot of success in this season. He's been hit really hard with the long ball. Hasn't really been able to control the ball low in the zone. His sinker hasn't been there. That's been part of his issue. But with Rick Porcello, he really is key to their success. Because if you talk about postseason baseball, you talk about what he's capable of doing. And we saw it last year. And I don't think he is that pitcher. But I think he's closer to it than he is now. So if you look at this, you have Chris Sale. Chris Sale doesn't really have playoff experience, but you have to figure he's going to be really good. Healthy David Price, even with his lack of success, I think he has something to prove. I think he's going to pitch well. But if you have Rick Porcello, if he's some shape or form familiar to what he was last year, I think you have to feel really good about that. Because I don't know if you can really put too much faith into Drew Pomeranz in a postseason game. I don't think you put that much faith in Eduardo Rodriguez as well. And certainly not Doug Fister. So I think a lot sits with Rick Porcello. What I saw on Thursday from him was what I've seen all year, though. He still gets hit hard. That's been his issue. Talking about other things in that game, we saw Rafael Devers hit his 3rd home run with the Boston Red Sox, his 2nd at Fenway Park. Both of his home runs at Fenway have been over the Green Monster, hitting it at the opposite field, which has been impressive. I believe on Thursday night's home run, he was a little late to that pitch, and he was still able to drive it over the Monster, which is impressive. Dennis Eckersley said it on the broadcast, and Evan Cook actually said it as well on the Red Sox show for Trifecta Network, where he said that they both said that they haven't figured him out yet, Major League pitchers, and I think that's obvious to see. You see that all the time with rookies who come up. Works both ways for pitchers and for hitters. We saw it here with Daisuke Matsuzaka when he came over from Japan. No one could figure him out, and when they did, he got hit hard. And you've seen it here in Boston with Andrew Benintendi. Andrew Benintendi got figured out and went down pretty quick, and then he came back up once he learned to adjust. So you can obviously look at Rafael Devers and say, well, he's batting over 400. This is way above anything he's capable of doing. And Evan even went on to say he can't even bat 300. 20-year-old rookie, so it's fair. But I look at Rafael Devers as a different kind of player than we're used to seeing here. He's a 20-year-old guy, but if you watched Thursday's game, or if you haven't, go back. Watch his 3rd at-bat. They brought in a left-handed pitcher to get the lefty-on-lefty matchup, where the pitcher has the advantage there. Rafael Devers worked a 9-pitch walk. The kind of batter's eye, patience you have to have, that's of a player well beyond his years, and you've seen it. This guy is launching home runs when he seemingly guessed the wrong pitch or wasn't on time. So while I think he's not a 400 hitter or even a 300 hitter at this moment, I still think this is a player who down the stretch here can at least bat 280, 290 for the Boston Red Sox. I think what Devers is capable of doing is more than what people think he is. Obviously, he's having a lot of immense success right now with his team. But I don't think it's that far-fetched for him to continue having success. And obviously, I think that average is going to come down. But I do think for the remainder of this year, in the foreseeable future, this guy's going to be a legit player for the Boston Red Sox. He's a veteran behind his ears. This is a rookie player who has veteran-capable hands, reactionary speed, being able to predict what's coming at him. This is a guy who can hit, and that was the thing. That was the number one thing scouts said, that this guy can hit. The feeling was going to be the question with Rafael Devers, but he's been serviceable at the major league level. Now, I saw him play in Pawtucket. Saw him play a ton in Pawtucket. Basically his entire time. Which was only like 8 days, but still. I don't think he is a third baseman. I don't think he's ready to play third base. I think he's been serviceable, surprisingly, at the major league level. I think he will get exposed there. I think he needs to grow into that. I think he can develop into really a legit third baseman. But I see him long-term, more of a first baseman or a DH. But, he's 20, so you can figure that out. You kind of move him around. I think keep at third base for now is great. See if he can work out there. Because if he can work out at third base, if he can, that'll be fantastic. Because the Boston Red Sox have had a big issue at third base since Wade Boggs left in 1992. They haven't really had a player there for a long period of time. I think Mike Lowe was the longest tenured third baseman for Boston after Wade Boggs. And I think he was there for, 3.5 years, maybe 4 seasons for Mike Lowe. Could say Kevin Youkilis, but Uke moved over to first base. So if you do look at this team and Rafael Devers, I think he's been a really great addition to it. They're claiming that he is the hitter that they brought in. They didn't make a trade at the deadline, but they brought up Rafael Devers. Eduardo Nunez has been electric for this team. I think he's playing out of his mind. I think he will come down, but he's been very hot since June. So it's not like this is a new thing with Eduardo Nunez. It's 2 full months of really elite hitting. And who would have thunk it? But bringing him over looked like a deal for David Dombrowski, and the fact that Pedroia's knee has been bothering him. Eduardo Nunez looked like a very key deal, and has really helped them get on this little win streak they're on and get them to a 2-game lead over the New York Yankees for first place in the AL East. Talking about Pedroia, I believe that if this was late September, must-win games, if this was postseason baseball, I think whatever knee issues he's having right now, whatever soreness or pain he's having, I think he'd be on the field. Because I think that's who he is, and I think he understands that, my window is closing, right? My window in baseball is closing. And for Pedroia, he's going to have to be there in the postseason. This is a guy who's a leader. Now, you can have questions about that. With the David Price situation and all that, you can have questions about the leadership that he is. But Dustin Pedroia is a leader on the field. No, we can all see that. He leads by example. He gives all out for every play. And that's part of the reason why he has a knee injury. It's why he had a wrist injury a couple years back, too. But his importance, being in the locker room, is great. You saw he was the first guy to high-five everybody after the win the last couple times. He was the first guy out of the dugout to give high fives after Thursday's win. So while I think Pedroia is a leader in the locker room, I think his presence on the field is more important. And I think if this was playoff baseball, he'd be out there. I do question his long-term capabilities because I do think the knee is going to be an issue for him. And that's something that Dave Dombrowski acknowledges, saying he's probably going to have to deal with it for the rest of his career. So I do question the length of Pedroia's career at this point. I think, he's had a very long career at this point. Been here since 2007. You're talking about 10 years in the big leagues. I think he has a couple more years in him. But who knows with that knee? He had knee surgery this past offseason. And he might have to have something again at the end of this season. So Dustin Pedroia's knee is something worth looking into. Talking about the Red Sox bullpen. This is a topic I talked about on the Red Sox show with Evan Cook. Talked about Addison Reed, that trade they had for him. But if you do look at this Red Sox bullpen, they do have some depth now. You have Craig Kimbrell, obviously, best closer in baseball in my opinion. You have Joe Kelly, who isn't really proven in high leverage situations, but he's coming back from injury, so we'll see what happens with him. But I think he's a very good option to have in there. Matt Barnes is an option you have. Addison Reed, 8th, 7th inning guy. John Farrell says he'll use him situationally, either the 7th or 8th inning. Has some playoff experience, but he got torched in 2015 World Series with the New York Mets. You have Brandon Workman. Brandon Workman was a big success story in the 2013 World Series for the Boston Red Sox. Came in high leverage situations in the World Series, helped you win the 2013 World Series. He's an interesting pitcher. He had Tommy John. Kind of got back to his form this past year. And, he's in Boston now. He's pitched very well for the Boston Red Sox over the last month. You have Blaine Boyer in your bullpen. I think he'll probably be gone when Kelly comes back up or something will happen with that. You have Carson Smith, who could potentially rehab for the Portland Sea Dogs this weekend. We'll obviously see it and believe it when it happens. But I think it's an interesting conversation to have with this bullpen. Who do you send out for what? I think John Farrell's a pretty traditional manager. So I think Craig Kimbrell is your 9th. I don't think he's going to use him like an Andrew Miller, where you put him in the high leverage situation the most important time of the game. But your ninth is going to be Craig Kimbrell. So who's your eighth inning guy? John Farrell said it's Reed, but Reed can pitch the seventh like he did on Thursday, depending on what situation is going on. Which is fine. That's something, I agree with. I think that's important. So if Reed's pitching the seventh for you, is Matt Barnes going to be pitching the eighth? That's what happened on Thursday, and I don't know how good I feel about Matt Barnes pitching the eighth inning of a playoff game or a must-win game. The sixth inning for Matt Barnes, I feel good about. So this is, with Joe Kelly is another interesting guy to talk about too, because I don't know how good I feel about Joe Kelly being the eighth inning reliever if you do have to put Addison Reed in the seventh. And obviously Craig Kimbrell could get you 6 outs if you really need it in a playoff. Addison Reed potentially could get you 4 or 5. So you can kind of piece it together so you don't have to use anybody else. But you kind of have to. You have to have that option. So who's going to pitch the eighth inning? Is it going to be Brandon Workman? I don't think so. They're going to start to work him into these high leverage situations. So we'll see from Brandon Workman pretty quickly. With Joe Kelly, that injury kind of pushed it back a little bit because they were going to start to use him in high leverage situations. You kind of saw it. So you didn't really get a good sample size there. Maybe you'll see something in August and September when he comes back. Matt Barnes, from what I've seen, is not very good in high leverage situations. I think he's a fine reliever, but in certain situations, I think if you put him in that really tough, tight window, it doesn't necessarily work that well. Talk about Blaine Boyer. He's a good situational guy to have. Heath Hembry, Fernando Abad, but these are very situational. Bring him in for 1 out, and that's it. And that's something you've actually seen Farrell do quite a bit lately, especially with Fernando Abad. Fernando Abad will literally come in to get 1 batter, and then he's done, which is fine. You need that in your bullpen. So this whole puzzle comes down to Carson Smith. Because I think without Carson Smith, you're fine. I think, Matt Barnes, Joe Kelly, Addison Reed, Craig Kimbrell, Brandon Workman, Abad, Hembry, those are fine. Those are good guys to have. And I ultimately think that you can win a playoff series with that, or I think you can, win a couple or whatever. I think that's a solid option for John Farrell. I have to give Dombrowski credit. I think he's built a pretty solid bullpen here. From top to bottom. I think it's solid. But if Carson Smith comes back, you have a whole different situation here. Because when Carson Smith comes back, he's a legit 8th inning pitcher. You don't know what you're going to get. If Carson Smith can come back, can throw without pain and all that, and checks all the boxes, he comes back. What kind of pitcher is he? Is he the same pitcher that was in Seattle 2 seasons ago? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But that's going to determine, is he going to be a 7th inning guy, or is he going to be a legit 8th? Like he was in Seattle. Because if he is, and you have a combination of Reed, Smith, to get the Kimbrell, then on top of that, you have guys like Joe Kelly, who can throw 100 plus miles per hour. Matt Barnes, throw it up in the upper 90s, has some movement as well. And Brandon Workman. You have to feel very confident for that bullpen if you're the Boston Red Sox. And if it's a 1-game must-win, and you're going Chris Sale is giving you 7 to 8 innings. I mean, it really could be an impressive situation here for the Boston Red Sox. As much as I'm not a fan of some of their moves, I think that they've built a nice little thing here in this bullpen. I think they pitched very well. In fact, I believe they've overpitched in terms of their potential. I think they've overreached a little bit. I think you've seen some regression from guys like Matt Barnes, but Matt Barnes, outside of the blow-up a couple days ago, Matt Barnes has actually been a very good reliever for the last month and a half. So we'll see what happens with his team. But I think they'll be fine in the bullpen. I think the lineup's still their question. I think Eduardo Nunez, I think he's going to come down. I think he will. It's inevitable. I think he's still playing out of his mind, which is interesting to see. But I think if he comes down, I think Rafael Devers isn't a 400-plus hitter. Can he bat 280, 290, 300 maybe? Yeah, okay. I buy that. I think guys like Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, Andrew Benintendi, Hanley Ramirez, Jackie Bradley Jr., those are the guys you got to look at. Those are the guys that you look and, they're underproducing. Some more than others. Xander Bogaerts has been dreadful. Dreadful. Since suffering that hand injury. Mookie Betts has been, in my opinion, very bad all year. This is the guy who's going consistently 1 for 5. Having hitless games. So This is one of his worst years in the major. Mookie Betts. And he's an MVP kind of player. We saw it last year. I don't think he was ever going to live up to what he had last year. But he's still underperforming. Jackie Bradley obviously isn't going to hit as many home runs as he did last year, but another guy who's underperforming for you. Andrew Benintendi, I think he's right on point right now. I think that's what you're going to get out of a rookie like him in left field. That's fine. Mitch Moreland, I think he's already given you what you paid him in terms of his contract. And ever since the foot injury, his mechanics have been off. He's gotten a little bit better as of late, but I'm still not really sold on him. But you look at Mookie Betts, you look at Bogarts, you look at Benintendi, you look at Hanley Ramirez. And these guys, they have the potential to really provide you a lot of pop, a lot of hits, and a lot of runs. The question is, can they do it? And I think that the absence of David Ortiz in the lineup has affected everybody. Because you don't have that big protection from that veteran hitter that every pitcher was afraid to face. So guys batting in front of him face more pitches. Guys batting in back of him did as well. His pitchers were trying to pitch around Ortiz. Hanley's not that same kind of hitter as Ortiz, but I still think that Hanley Ramirez is your best hitter, your most dangerous hitter, guys that people watch out to. But you can pitch around one guy. I don't think Mookie Betts really strikes fear in the eyes of a pitcher. I think you can still work around him as well. You give up a single or a double, okay. But he's not going to really strike fear into your eyes. And I think that's kind of the issue with this team is they don't have that true power hitter outside of Hanley. Devers, 3 home runs. He just came up. He's a rookie. He's not really a power hitter anyway, and I don't necessarily see Devers as a legit power hitter in his career going forward. I think, he has the potential to hit 25, 30 home runs, which is great. But, Hanley Ramirez is a guy who has a chance to hit 30, 35 home runs in any given season. So when you lost Ortiz, you lost a guy who hits 35-plus home runs, a guy who's a smart hitter. And they didn't replace him with anything. You replace him with bits and pieces, guys like Moreland. You kind of replace it with that kind of guy. Hanley Ramirez was going to flip into the DH role. And ultimately, Hanley's been relatively a disappointment, but I think he's still your best hitter. And it is tough to say guys are underproducing without Ortiz because, without that protection from Ortiz, you can't really blame them. They're not getting the same pitches. People are attacking them instead of pitching to get them. It's interesting. It really is with this team. You didn't replace Ortiz, and that's kind of hurt you a little bit, but you're still first place. 2 games up in the New York Yankees. This will be down to the wire, quite literally, going into the rest of August and then September. And I think they should win the AL East. I think with this talent you have in your roster, even with the Yankees getting Sonny Gray, I still think you should be the team to beat. Because I don't think the Yankees are that good. I still think they're overrated. I think they'll be better in the years to come. I still think the Yankees will probably be a better team than the Boston Red Sox for the next 5 years. But I think the Red Sox will be right there. So that's it here for Trifecta Sports Talk. I'm your host, Tanner Abello. Make sure to check us out on TrifectaNetwork.com. Check out our Twitter handle at Trifecta Network or my personal Twitter handle at Tanner Abello. Make sure to like us on Facebook at Boston Sports 617. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or want to join Trifecta Network, just head to our website, hit the contact us page, or hit the Write For Us page. Thank you for listening, and have a great weekend, and hopefully the Red Sox can win a couple games here and get the Patriots going next week.